What's that?
Drinking is okay, just
Yeah. So this is what we're looking at here for that. Now, afterload then is normally not an issue, because for most people this number stays about the same. We're not going to worry about changing that, right? But here's where it's a problem in the long run. Have you heard of people having chronic hypertension? Anybody know if they have high blood pressure? No, well, we'll find. Some of you will. Chronic hypertension. Now, chronic hypertension is defined, clinically as a systolic value over 200 and or a diastolic value over 100. So if we think of this as kind of our extreme, if either one of these values are true for you, you have hypertension and you need to be on medication kind of right away. Pre-hypertension would be if this number here is in the neighborhood of 160 or so, or 50, 150, 160. At rest, it shouldn't be. And if this number is approaching 90, that's not good either. Okay, but that's not serious right away, and we could change that. Now, why is chronic hypertension a problem, and why is it called the silent killer? It's called the silent killer because typically what happens is that it is an increase in your diastolic blood pressure. Now, because of that increase in diastolic blood pressure here, your heart has to work a lot harder just to keep the same pulse pressure to keep pumping this out. So over time, with chronic hypertension, my heart is having to beat harder and harder and harder and harder just to keep a resting pressure here. So I could be 30 years old and have hypertension and it have no impact on my body. I wouldn't know it. I'm out there playing around, I'm running, I'm jumping, doing everything just fine. I'm 40, I'm still doing things just fine. As I start to be 50, I'm realizing, man, my circulation's not as good as it used to be. I'm getting winded more easily. I'm having a harder time doing the things I used to do before. So I go to the doctor, he takes my pressure, and guess what? He's like, oh, you got hypertension. And then he looks at my heart and says, oh, my heart's been enlarged a little bit. Right? My valves have been weakened because of all the increases in pressure. And I have cardiovascular issues because of that. So that's why hypertension is a silent killer, is because by the time you start to see the overt effects of hypertension, your heart has already had permanent damage. So that's why it's important when you're young, like you are right now, to know what your blood pressures are so that you can modify your lifestyle and or go on medication if you need to keep them where they need to be. So we would say that this afterload is a high diastolic pressure, right? And so we'll call this just the effect due to chronic hypertension. But it's nothing certainly that we affect on a daily basis or an hour-to-hour basis or anything like that to affect our stroke volume. Because these are the two big things. So is that okay? Question about that?
Where does sodium plays a part in blood pressure when they tell the people with hypertension to reduce intake of salt?
Okay, if you have a diet high in salt, your blood osmolarity is going to be high. And we know water likes to go towards the hyperosmolar area. So a lot of water comes into your bloodstream, your blood volume goes up. When your blood volume goes up, your blood pressure goes up. So if we can reduce osmolarity, which is what we try to do by having a diuretic or by having something that causes us to excrete sodium or by limiting our salt intake, that will reduce our blood pressure because of that. You know, there's always contradicting evidence about the true effect of sodium. Typically, if the kidneys are functioning optimal and well, it's kind of hard to overload your body with sodium. It does a pretty good job of getting rid of it. So hypertension is usually due to some other reason, like hyperconstriction of blood vessels or impaired kidney function or something like that. We'll actually talk about that next time.